Welcome on, welcome all. Thank you for tuning in to Cedarly Radio, your guide to films playing at the Art House for the week of May 30th to June 6th. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Dave Huffman. On this week's episode, we'll be discussing The Last, Rocketman, and nonfiction.
We'll also be discussing the award winners at the Cannes Film Festival, Meh Films and Filmmakers, and our Cedarly 3 picks for great French romantic comedies. Well, we always like to start off the show with the last scene first. So, Dave, what was the last film you've seen?
The last film I saw was from 1982, Robert Benton's Still of the Night, which was kind of his attempt at making a Hitchcockian kind of thriller, I guess. And I say attempt because I would say it didn't succeed.
Yeah.
But it starred Meryl Streep, so it was the next film he did after Kramer versus Kramer, so it had her again and Roy Scheider, and it was just meh. That's what I would say about that movie.
Not a slogan that's going to go on the poster.
Yeah. The reviews are in. Meh.
Meh.
Yeah. It is not, I mean, considering what an amazing writer he is, he wrote Bonnie and Clyde and Places in the Heart and Kramer Kramer. He's an amazing writer. This was such a clunky kind of exercise, I think, that he probably just loved those kinds of movies and wanted to make one. And
right.
I just don't think it quite worked. Yeah. So have you ever seen it or heard of it?
I haven't. I've heard of it, yeah, but I haven't seen it. I mostly know his career, like you said, from writing, just being a 1970s American film obsessive. His name's popped up a lot through that era, but yeah, maybe it's one of those like, excels at one thing, but maybe spreads a little too thin once it's, writing and directing duties.
No. I mean, he wrote and directed Kramer versus Kramer and other stuff too. I mean, he's made great films. I think just this specific genre exercise did not work.
Oh, okay,
gotcha. Say.
Yeah, I'm kind of unfamiliar with his directorial output as well. I've never seen Kramer versus Kramer.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a great drama. Again, the kind of movies they just don't make anymore.
Right.
and what was the last thing you saw, Aaron?
I want to say, speaking of meh, it doesn't apply to the movie I saw, but the meh reaction to the finale of Game of Thrones. I was thinking about the last probably 4 or 5 days because my son, who's 11, we've been going through watching the extended cuts of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He's never seen them. So last night we finished up with Return of the King, and I just kept thinking of the whole last season of Game of Thrones as we watched it, because I was like, this is how you do it. Like, it's, you take your time, you take the amount of space you need to tell the story, especially coming from, beloved source material and everything. And, aside, Game of Thrones aside, I'd only seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy in the theaters when they came out. I had never revisited them, and there was, I think, varying degrees of success with the extended versions, but especially for the first one and the third one, basically, I think are much more enhanced story-wise by having the extended versions. The middle one felt like they did do a good job in editing that down for the theater, but it hooked 11-year-old, and we ordered the trilogy of books for him to read now this summer, so it did its job.
Well, that's good. And are you going to watch The Hobbit as well?
I've never seen any of those. So, yeah, he was interested in The Hobbit. He wants to read that book first. So I was like, I think he's going to have the same reaction that most of the fans, Tolkien fans have of, that book's great. Meh, with the Hobbit films. So.
Yeah, the Hobbit films were just, especially when how really great the Lord of the Rings films were. The Hobbit ones, I don't know, just meh is right. Maybe that's the theme of this week's podcast. Meh.
So in the last few episodes, we've been sort of charting the Cannes Film Festival as it was approaching, as it was actually happening. And now this week, the festival has finally wrapped. We'd mentioned that there was the late edition of Quentin Tarantino's new film, and there was some speculation. Will he win the Palme d'Or 25 years, after the Pulp Fiction one? And he did not.
No, he did not.
Instead, it went to Bong Joon-Ho for, is it Parasite or The Parasite?
It's Parasite. Yeah, just Parasite.
Parasite, okay.
Not to be confused with the cheesy 3D film starring Demi Moore from the early 80s, also named Parasite.
Ooh. That's true. Yeah, I don't think that'd be too confusing. Well, since he did The Host, I was thinking, I didn't read the description of this movie, so I was thinking another, kind of genre monster movie based on the title, but no, it is not.
It is not a genre monster movie, but yeah, I'm very excited to see it. I think he's an amazing filmmaker. Snowpiercer is amazing. The Host is amazing. We've played a lot of his films here, and this one hopefully we'll be playing as well. It was picked up by Neon, and we usually play a lot of their films, so hopefully we'll be showing it here in the not too distant future at the Cedarly.
I know the phone calls usually start right away when the Palme d'Or is announced, or like the Sundance Film Festival when they announce their award winners. People I love the enthusiasm for it, but it takes a minute to get from Cannes, specifically from Cannes, to the Art House. So stay tuned. We'll let you know when that one's coming, and we'll be right back with the new films opening up this week at the theater.
And this week we're going to be opening the latest film from writer-director Jeff Lipsky. It's called The Last, and it is about 4 generations of a Jewish family who are rocked to the core when their family's 92-year-old matriarch makes a stunning confession.
Nana! I knew you'd make it! What are you even doing here? You shouldn't be here. We would have come to pick you up for lunch.
I brought pictures, vintage photographs.
Who are these people wearing swastikas on their sleeves?
The man on the left is Dr. Karl Klauberg.
Who is the other man?
Dr. Horst Schumann. I prefer not to discuss him. I never understood him. He was evil.
And the woman?
That's me, later.
No, not later. Nana, you're wearing
A nurse's uniform.
Where was this taken?
Auschwitz.
And we've shown several of Jeff Lipsky's films in the past, including Flannel Pajamas. And he actually, if you follow film distribution, he was the man who started October Films, which was sort of like Miramax Jr. At a certain point in the 90s, I guess you could say.
It really was, yeah.
And so he's, spent his whole life in film distribution and just movies in general, and he's been in this part of his career has been a writer-director, and this film has been getting pretty strong reviews actually, and especially for the star Rebecca Scholl, who is, I think she's 90 in real life. I don't think she's 92, so she's playing
close though. Yeah, she's very close.
She's playing pretty close to her age, and she's been a character actress in a lot of things, and TV and film and stage work, but this is sort of the film that's kind of getting her a little critical acclaim.
It's one of those wonderful times when a strong character actor through the years finally gets, someone's been paying attention and gets, a good solid meaty role for them to really, show off their skills.
Yeah.
I couldn't place her when I was first watching this trailer, and then I looked up her filmography. I was like, oh, Wings. My family watched a lot of the TV sitcom Wings for some reason back in the day.
Well, I don't think I ever watched one episode of Wings, so I didn't recognize
it
from that. No, it was one of those shows that just, I was going to say flew right past me, but that's a bad pun.
Oh,
there you go.
And the next film we have opening is Rocketman from director Dexter Fletcher.
What did you say your name was again?
My name is...
Reggie!
Reginald Dwight.
Reginald. That's my granddad's name.
So how does a fat boy from nowhere get to be a soul man?
You gotta kill the person you were born to be in order to become the person you wanna be.
I'm thinking of changing my name to Elton.
Well, I don't really need a synopsis. It's the Elton John movie. It's the Elton John movie. I feel like it's known just because, we read a ton of film stuff, but the film that everybody loved last year that I was not part of that club was Bohemian Rhapsody. That Dexter Fletcher stepped in because it was a kind of a notorious in the film world, a troubled production that Bryan Singer got the director credit for it, but was fired or walked off.
Yeah,
I don't remember how that worked.
Yeah.
Fired. And then Dexter Fletcher came in and finished that film up. So it's kind of hard to tell what kind of creative elements he contributed to Bohemian Rhapsody.
Well, maybe after we see this movie, we'll be able to tell.
We'll be able to tell. I just find it kind of interesting that he's kind of carving out a niche now of British musician biopics,
right.
Or musicals, really. But this one seems a much more straight up musical to me, at least based on the preview. There's people breaking out into song.
Yes.
And, full dance numbers and fantasy sequences where the whole audience, is lifted up literally by Elton John's music.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to see. I mean, it's getting, again, great reviews, and his music is so popular. It'll be very interesting to see if it has the same kind of, cultural impact that Bohemian Rhapsody did. If, as many people come out to see it over and over again. That's what made Bohemian Rhapsody such a hit, is because you get all those people that are such fans of the music and fans of the band that they just come out and see the movie over and over again. And, maybe we'll get the same thing for Elton John fans.
I kind of wonder if, based on the popularity, to me, I'm not a huge fan of either one, but I would say I like Elton John more than Queen a bit. So I think Elton John also being around for so long has probably just gathered more worldwide fans, possibly, than Queen.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think they're probably comparable on that same level of icon status of musical artists. Obviously, he's, they're both still touring. I mean, Freddie Mercury's not with us, but, Queen continues to tour and doing big shows.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was looking up some information on this, and apparently over the years, this movie's been kind of trying to get going since 2012-ish.
Yeah.
And the lineup of almost played Elton John list is a really interesting list of actors. There's Tom Hardy, James McAvoy, Daniel Radcliffe, and Justin Timberlake.
Yeah. I would, I just can't quite picture. I think someone like Justin Timberlake, who is his own pop star, would be challenging for him to play a different iconic pop star. Justin Timberlake's an okay actor, but I don't know that it would be, I don't know, interesting to see a performer try to take on another performer's mannerisms in the same field. Actors kind of transform into that. And
absolutely.
And Justin Timberlake's an actor in his own right as well, but not, you don't think of him that as his primary kind of role in life.
Right. Well, he has his own impact on the musical scene too, and I still think of him as a musician,
sure,
more than I think of him as an actor, like you said. Even though he's turned in some great acting roles over the years so far, I think it's probably best though to go with someone like Taron Egerton, who
yes.
Is somewhat known from Kingsman, but I don't think is nowhere near as well known as any of those actors are. So you don't have any of that personal baggage coming where you're like, oh, look, Tom Hardy's doing a really good job. He looks like he's inhabiting Elton John to a very intense degree. So this is just, his mark, it's just him being Elton John. There's no baggage from previous iconic works that he's done.
I do think Tom Hardy would have been a very interesting choice to see him play something
I would like to
so
see
kind
it,
of like joyful and flamboyant as opposed to brooding, which he does so well. It'd be really interesting to see. I would like for him to try to take something like that. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, the final film they're opening this week is Nonfiction, which is the new film from writer-director Olivier Assayas. And it is set in Paris in the publishing world about an editor and an author who find themselves in over their heads as they cope with middle-age crisis, the changing industry, and their wives.
Are you pretty familiar? Do you follow Assayas' career, Dave? I don't know if we really talked about it before.
I haven't seen every one of his movies, but I've seen quite a few of them. And, I was not as big of a fan of Personal Shopper as a lot of people were. I thought it was an interesting kind of mishmash of ideas, but I didn't quite think it worked. But Clouds of Sils Maria is brilliant, and Summer Hours are great. I mean, a lot of his movies are really beautiful and cool. And this is a very good film, and it's got just great writing and wonderful performances with Juliette Binoche is just amazing in it, playing an actress who's she's the star of a sort of like a cop TV show, although she gets angry anytime someone says that she plays a cop in a show. She's I forget what she always says. She's like, no, I'm an emergency interventionist or something like that,
Right.
It's a comedy, but it's not like a laugh out loud comedy. It's got, humorous situations about a lot of people kind of, the affairs that are going on that people know about, don't know about. It's about a writer who is, kind of in hot water over thinly veiling, people's true identities in his latest book and, the kind of fallout of that. It's got a lot to say about the changing, world of publishing and how people get their, read, whether they're reading online and, if you publish a book of tweets and emails, is that a book? That kind of, discussions go on in this film.
That's, I don't know how it would sound in French because I don't know French, but I guess the original title was that he was working with in the script form was ebook, which sounds like it echoes exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's a good, I mean, he's a great filmmaker. So I'm glad that he continues to basically not quite make one movie a year, but almost, it seems like lately. So
he's pretty fairly prolific, which as a fan of his work, I enjoy not waiting, like a Paul Thomas Anderson level of,
right.
7 years for every movie or something like that. He's also hopped genres so effortlessly, which is what I thought was really interesting in Personal Shopper, because like you said, I think I liked it more than you did, but he's able to kind of switch between tones and genres within one movie, but also just within his career as well. He did the 3-part Carlos the Jackal movie with Edgar Ramirez,
which is great.
And there's literally for episode 1's like an action thriller. There's like a hostage negotiation for an hour in part 2. But like you said, it goes back to Summer Hours or some movies that are a bit more like intimate character studies. And this one, just based on the preview of Nonfiction, it has that kind of effervescent kind of French, sophisticated, like you said, kind of like romantic comedy, but those words kind of conjure up maybe not exactly what he's doing. Like there's romance involved and there's comedy involved, but it's not the way Americans think of romantic comedies, which we'll get into probably in a moment here.
And it definitely is. It almost, in some ways, sort of almost reminded me of a Woody Allen movie, but not at all like a Woody Allen movie. It reminded me of a Woody Allen movie in that it was really intelligent kind of characters talking about something very specific that they're passionate about,
right?
And the sort of sexual gamemanship of kind of bed hopping around stuff. So it had sort of those kind of influences, but it's not like a Woody Allen comedy by any means. Like the style of comedy is very, very different.
Right. It looks like that kind of genre that we lament oftentimes, not necessarily on air during the podcast, but like, smartly written movies for an adult audiences that like good movies.
Yes.
Like that mid-budget sort of thing that just isn't made anymore.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly what this is.
We'll be right back with our Cedarly 3 picks for this week, inspired by nonfiction. So each week we like to take inspiration from one of the new films and suggest 3 other films based on that theme to broaden your cinematic world. This week we chose to highlight Olivier Assayas' nonfiction, so we went with French Romantic Comedies.
And you can talk about French Romantic Comedies without talking about the granddaddy of them all and the, ultimate Cedar Lee movie, as we said, because it's played longer than any other film ever here at the Cedar Lee, and that's Amélie. Now, I didn't put it on my list, but I just wanted to, pay homage to it and acknowledge that Amélie is probably the quintessential romantic comedy that everybody loves, and I love it as well. And so I wanted to talk about a movie adjacent to that, which is another film by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, which is Delicatessen, which most people would not think of as a romantic comedy because it's just this dark...
Those were the words that were just going through my head.
It's a very dark comedy about, cannibalism, but it also has a nice little sweet romantic story in there. So it is a twist on romantic comedies.
It does, yeah.
Because you've got Dominique Pignon, and I don't remember the name of the actress that plays the daughter that he's sort of like wooing, and their love kind of blossoms in this completely surreal world in this apartment that all the tenants have their own kind of... Every apartment is its own sort of weird little nightmare scenario of oddities. And of course, then there's the butcher selling human meat. So it's just a weird little movie that I love so much. And it was like 10 years, I think, before Amélie. It was from 1991, I believe. And it's such a, it's a movie I've watched over and over again. I've probably actually seen that movie more than Amélie. And because I just find that it's such a great, weird visual movie. It so encapsulates his style so much. And if you've never seen Delicatessen, it is, if you read the description, you might be turned off but it isn't a gory movie really at all. That's
a good point. Yeah.
It's just a strange, really fun, clever, unique movie.
Because when Amélie came out, I wasn't terribly excited for it because I knew Jean-Pierre Jeunet from Delicatessen and City of Lost Children, which were definite in like when I was in college, like those were in like cult film status and in rotation. People passed around like, oh my God, you've never seen City of Lost Children?
Right.
Sit down, we're watching it kind of movies. And then I read the synopsis for Amélie, like, oh, there's a new movie's coming up. I was like, sweet, what is it? And I read it, I was like, why is he going all like sweet and like standard romantic comedy? Which it turns out, it's not.
It's definitely
it has all of his visual flares are right there as well. And, he just, transitioned to a different genre and made a fantastic film out of it. I didn't have it on my list either, but it seemed like, you could have a conversation about French romantic comedies without Amélie, but it wouldn't be a very thorough one and respectful one because this is sort of like the honorary Amélie list we've got here.
Absolutely. So what's the first French romantic comedy you want to talk about?
I realized once I just jotted out like right off the top of my head the ones that really stuck with me over the years. These were all movies that I ended up watching in film school. I took 2 different French film classes, and there's so many heavy, like just the existential dread that hangs over a lot of French films throughout French film history. These movies I latched onto because they were lighter. They were still, high quality films, but they had a great, just like a lighter touch to them. And it was just such a relief to, not be watching another, dour, World War II occupation of France kind of movie.
Right.
So the first one that popped into my head was the original La Cage aux Folles. I think I said that right.
La Cage aux Folles.
La Cage aux Folles.
La Cage aux
from
Folles.
1975, 8, somewhere in there. 78. I couldn't read my notes here. I didn't write an 8 very well. Obviously remade as The Birdcage, which was a huge hit stateside as well, decades later.
Don't get me started talking about The Birdcage.
Well, we're not. We're talking about La Cage. So I assume you were a fan of the original then and not the new one?
I enjoy the original. Yes, I think it's fun and charming. It's extremely dated now if you watch it now. But I think The Birdcage.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
The Birdcage, and they both are sort of, gay minstrel shows in a way, even though they have a nice positive message sort of. But I found The Birdcage sitting there as a young gay man watching The Birdcage, and everybody just kind of I was getting angrier and angrier as I watched The Birdcage. So
I could see that. Yeah, that does make sense.
So
not having that as my personal experience. This like La Cage, the original one, watching that. I think we just actually rented it from the film department. We didn't like screen it in class, but it was a good just like palate cleanser, kind of like, oh my God, this is so funny. And then I think it was a few years before the Birdcage came out, and then I didn't see Birdcage till video, years later. I was like,
Well, Lacage.
I haven't revisited it, so I can't speak to if it probably is going to feel dated, like you said.
It does feel very dated now, but it's culturally very important. Like, I'm not one of those people that wants to go back and rewrite history. I think that things that happened at the period that they happened in, there's a reason, and everything helped move the needle forward a little bit. And that film certainly helped move the needle. Any representation at a time whenever gays and lesbians were just invisible or usually had to die at the end of a movie. I just watched a documentary called Dyke's Camera Action, which was all about lesbian filmmakers, and they reference a lot of the women in the film reference The Fox, if you've ever seen that old Sandy Dennis movie, where there's at the end, there's always a tree about to fall on a lesbian, so that was a time whenever like gays always had to die at the end of the movies. So Lacage, of course, is a very positive film. So I admire it for that. So even though it's very dated now.
But you're right, though. It does have that, like, would you say gay minstrel show vibe, where it is kind of like the butt of the joke is like their lifestyle.
Yes, exactly. But it's still, again, it's important from a historic standpoint. So I admire it for that. Well, I also picked a French comedy from the mid-'70s. It's probably the first French film that I can honestly remember seeing growing up, which was Cousin Cousine, which is remade with here in the States as Cousins. And it is a film about sort of the blossoming semi-taboo love affair between two people that find out that they're related, and kind of everyone around them sort of, questioning and concerned about it. And it's just, I remember watching it back whenever the A&E network on cable used to stand for arts and entertainment, and now of course it's just reality.
Oh my god,
garbage.
It does, you're right.
Yeah, but like there was a time when the A&E network showed like operas and foreign language films and all this like really interesting stuff. And I remember seeing like Entre Nous, which is another, not a romantic comedy, so I didn't put it on my list, but like all these great kind of French films that from the 70s and early 80s that I would watch a lot on cable back then. But when I look what A&E has become now, it's just different world we live in. But if you've ever seen Cousin Cousine, it's a very charming little movie, filled with sort of, almost like, I don't want to say Three's Company kind of, misunderstandings, but it's got some of that. It's got some great little broad scenes.
Right.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I have one from the late 60s that kind of that same one. We're just, light, fun, mostly just like an eye candy one. The Young Girls of Rochefort from 1967, the Jacques Demy film, which if people are fans of La La Land, Damien Chazelle's mentioned this movie as like one of his direct inspirations. And you can see the color palette on The Young Girls is transferred almost directly to La La Land. It's, true, just like kind of break out into song, kind of musical, some great, amazing dance sequences. Catherine Deneuve, of course, is
amazing,
always amazing. And this is, her at the height of her powers in her youth. As well. And then I always forget it. I've watched this 2 or 3 times now. I always forget when Gene Kelly pops up. And you're like, oh, hey, here's Gene Kelly again. So it does that kind of stand where kind of ups the ante too as it goes along and kind of gets to be a bigger. Each dance sequence and song is a bit more spectacular and builds throughout the film. So if you just watch the trailer for it, you'll be hooked. You'll be like, you'll see all the wild colors and just that. I don't know, just that light, breezy, but full of talent and music and set design that you want out of a musical romantic, French romantic musical comedy.
Well, to that point, transitioning to my final pick is a film that's not a musical, but it has that same sort of, the thing that I loved about this movie was the kind of production design and the aesthetics of it. It's a film we played a few years ago here at the Cedar called Populaire. It is set in the 50s. It's all about this, guy who's training his secretary to be like the world's best typist. It's got these great scenes, just costumes, and the color palette in it is just very stylized to an extreme kind of like 50s nostalgia level. And I just loved it from that standpoint. The movie is kind of a little trifle of a movie. It's okay. But just from a visual standpoint, when I think about that movie, that's all I really remember is the kind of visuals of it. So again, it's a nice, light, breezy little comedy. And
it has those touches like Amélie style or like even classic musical style where there's just a touch of fantasy to it that really kind of heightens the element and really kind of makes it pop. And I haven't gone back to watch it again, but I remember seeing it when it came out. And like we said before, like there's you can go to the art house and have some fun as well. It doesn't always have to be the dour, serious ones.
Exactly.
And I guess I probably should have paired this when you mentioned Delicatessen being not, maybe you don't think of it specifically as a like romantic comedy, even though there is that element to it. And that is Jules and Jim from 1962. Again, I said, because we're all kind of coming out of me sitting in a couple different French film classes back in the day at college. But it's one of Truffaut's best films, Francois Truffaut, starring Jean Moreau as Catherine. And it's not, I found it interesting in the time period because at the same time, you've got Eric Romer and Claude Chabrol doing Romer was doing the morality tales and Chabrol was doing all these like love triangle kind of movies. And this is a love triangle because it's two guys, Jules and Jim and Catherine, but it's not like a competitive, backstabbing, catty kind of relationship there. She's, with one for a little bit. I think is it World War I or World War II? I'm drawing a blank there.
One of the things I will confess is that I've never been the biggest Truffaut fan, and I remember watching that in college and just thinking, I don't get the appeal. So I feel like a lot of French New Wave stuff from that period, just like, meh. It's probably my least favorite kind of, important, significant world film movements. I'm just like, meh, yeah, French New Wave doesn't do anything for me.
Back to the meh.
Meh, yeah. It is the theme for this week's show, but not a lot of people would say Francois Truffaut, meh, but I do. Yeah, he's just not one of those filmmakers that I ever click with.
Taking a hard stance on that one, but that's why there's two of us here. Diversity of opinion, and exactly. I say watch it. I think it's it's one of those longer ones too. But
I'm the minority opinion on that. Most people would say it's a masterpiece.
Well, true, but it doesn't. Yeah,
I watch them and I'm just like meh.
All right. Well, next week's episode, we will be discussing 4 new movies that are coming out. We have All Is True, The Tomorrow Man, The Souvenir, and a new Woodstock documentary, Woodstock, 3 Days That Defined a Generation. So next week's Cedarly 3, we're going to take inspiration from All Is True, which is Kenneth Branagh's not Shakespeare adaptation, but he's literally playing Shakespeare this time. But we want to take a look at the films that have been adapted from the many brilliant works of Shakespeare. So next week's topic will be Shakespeare film adaptations. Submit your picks or any suggestions to us at Cedarly Theater using the hashtag Cedarly3, the number 3.
And we have a few kind of upcoming previews or trailers of coming attractions for special events that we want to tell you about this week. And that includes our Melt Bar and Grilled late shift films this weekend. We're showing Predator at Saturday, June 1st at 9:30 p.m. and midnight. And then Sunday, June 2nd at 7 p.m. And then, of course, we have our monthly showings of Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's Saturday, June 1st at midnight, which, of course, includes a live floor show by Simply His Servants.
The National Theater, which we've been showing for quite a while at the Cedarly, is celebrating its 10th anniversary of National Theater Live in cinemas. So we're bringing back a few of the major hits over the years. The first one coming up as an encore performance of The Audience, Tuesday, June 4th at 7 p.m. This is, of course, Helen Mirren playing Queen Elizabeth II as she meets with 12 different prime ministers over the years. We have a special kind of premiere screening event coming up called Pavarotti. This is the new documentary directed by Ron Howard, Academy Award winner Ron Howard, on the famous icon in the world of opera. Pavarotti, the premiere screening event, is on Tuesday, June 4th at 7 p.m. And we have a Bolshoi Ballet event coming up as well. It's the Carmen Suite. Petrushka is playing on Wednesday, June 5th at 7 p.m.
Then also on Wednesday, June 5th at 7 o'clock, we have a special screening of Saving Private Ryan, starring, of course, Tom Hanks, directed by Steven Spielberg. And then if you don't want to see an Oscar-winning film, on the Thursday, June 6th at 7:30, we're showing Star Raiders, which is one of the riff tracks live. So if you're a fan of Mystery Science Theater, this is some of the alumni of Mystery Science Theater, where they're doing a simulcast live event where they're just live mocking a terrible movie called Star Raiders.
As always, thank you for tuning in to Cedarly Radio and lending us your ears this week. All the music heard on the show is original music written by Grant Heineman and performed by the New Heights Jazz Ensemble, used with their permission, of course. Visit clevelandcinemas.com for correct showtimes and to purchase advance tickets. Also, there are links in the show notes. You can use those if you'd like as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Cedarly Theater, spelled with an R-E at the end because we're fancy like that. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast, and while you're subscribing, leave us a rating and review, or better yet, tell a fellow film geek about the show. We'll see you at the movies.